Coming up, primary battle.
I have a proven track record of delivering the things that the community needs.
I'm ready to use all of the skills that I have to deliver big wins for this district.
Two Democrats duke it out for a state Senate seat in Dallas County. We'll profile the race between incumbent Nathan Johnson and his challenger, State Representative Victoria Neave Criado. 2024 or 2026?
Do y'all think it would be a cool idea if, like, President Trump was to make the governor the vice president?
We asked Governor Abbott about the talk among some Texas Republicans that he's a potential VP pick to run with former President Donald Trump. What he says about that and his re-election in 2 years.
It will certainly result in an unusual amount of turnover within the delegation from this part of the state.
Capitol Hill vacancies with 3 open congressional seats in North Texas. We take a look at each race to see how they can end up and whether any candidate can win without a runoff. Good morning, I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics starts now. Hello and welcome to Eye on Politics. Hope you're having a great weekend. We begin with a hotly contested race in the heart of Dallas County. We're talking about the Democratic primary for the state Senate seat, District 16. Incumbent Nathan Johnson is facing a challenge from State Representative Victoria Neave Criado. Welcome to Texas Senate District 16, which includes parts of Richardson, Irving, Dallas, Mesquite, and other cities in Dallas County. State records show about half the population here is Hispanic, a district that was redrawn 3 years ago. The political battle to win this district is only between Democrats, Nathan Johnson, who's held this seat since 2019, and Victoria Neave Criado, who served in the Texas House since 2017. There are no Republican candidates, so whoever wins the Democratic primary wins the seat for the next 4 years. So why should Democrats vote for you to re-elect you over your challenger, Victoria Neave Criado?
If you want results, if you want the kinds of things that we all depend on from government, I have a proven track record of delivering the things that the community needs, that the district needs, that the state needs. Over the course of my 3 sessions, I've passed nearly 100 bills.
So you're giving up a safe House seat to run for Senate. Why?
One, several reasons. I'm the daughter of an immigrant dad. I was born and raised here in Dallas and, want to take our fight from the House to the Senate. As a leader in the House, as an attorney, I'm a first-generation college graduate in my family. I want to make sure that that lived experience is represented in the Senate.
We have to fight with everything that we have.
When it comes to their legislative priorities, both Victoria Neave Criado and Nathan Johnson say education is among them. They both oppose school vouchers or taxpayer-financed education savings accounts pushed by Governor Greg Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick.
And the grid failed, as you all know. You all suffered the trauma.
Johnson says he will continue fighting for improving the state's power grid after the deadly widespread blackouts during a severe winter storm 3 years ago, and increasing Texans' access to health care.
I passed a bill that got 350,000 people health insurance. I passed a bill out of the Senate that got $1.8 billion in the House, and we're now going to be deploying backup power systems throughout the state of Texas. And I keep mentioning these big tickets because those are big bills, and I'm a Democrat. It's hard. It's really, really hard to pass bills as a Democrat.
His bill to improve the grid included provisions to make sure there's backup power for nursing homes, water treatment facilities, and first responders. While his and other Democrats' efforts to expand Medicaid have failed in the Republican-majority Texas legislature, Johnson says he's focused on helping other Texans gain health insurance coverage from the Affordable Care Act.
Perhaps 1 million or more qualify for subsidies at a very, very high level. They just don't know it. So, short answer to your question, what could we do to get more people insured? We could have the state and private sector people get out there and explain to people that there are subsidies available on the ACA marketplace.
If elected, Neave Criado says she wants to keep focusing on another priority of hers while serving in the House.
I want to continue to focus on issues that disproportionately impact women. Sexual harassment in the workplace, for example. I passed a law to extend the statute of limitations for sexual harassment in the workplace. And this is in a Republican majority state. That is not something that is easy to do.
She points to her bill that passed in 2019, that mandated law enforcement agencies get old rape kits off the shelves and tested.
And I'm very proud to say that one of the rape kit backlogs has been eliminated in Texas because of the Lavinia Masters Act, because we got $50 million from the Texas budget tied to my bill that I passed. Because even though we've eliminated one of the backlogs, we still have some backlogs, unfortunately, in Texas, and women are waiting for justice.
Both Neave Criado and Johnson say they support reproductive rights and raising the age to buy an assault-style rifle to 21. Regarding border security, both oppose the state's new law making it a crime for a migrant to cross into Texas illegally and say immigration is the federal government's responsibility. But they disagree over another bill that passed, which increased the penalty against human smuggling. Neave Criado opposed it.
So there is fear in the community. We have to address these, which is why we're working on immigration informationals to inform individuals about their rights.
Johnson supported it.
It simply increased the penalty for those who are convicted of trafficking human beings. The underlying law, the penalty for which this bill increased, has been there for 24 years.
They both say they've worked with Republican lawmakers on some issues, but that fighting back is also a key part of the job.
We have a $2.5 trillion economy and 30 million people. I am not going to let the Republicans run all of that. I'm going to be involved in all these major issues. And we also have to recognize that we can't do it ourselves.
But when it comes to issues that impact our right to choose, when it comes to issues that impact diversity, supporting communities of color, when it comes to gun reform, raising the age to purchase an assault rifle, attacks on our LGBTQ community, we cannot accept that.
You can watch both of their full interviews on our website, cbsnewstexas.com, and click on the Eye on Politics section. And still ahead this morning, we'll break down the races for not one, not two, but 3 open congressional seats here in North Texas. But up next, what Governor Greg Abbott told us about the talk of him being a potential VP to run with former President Donald Trump and his re-election in 2026. Hope you stay with us. Welcome back to Eye on Politics. With former President Donald Trump comfortably ahead in the GOP primary polls here in Texas and across the country, Republicans are already talking about potential running mates for him. Governor Greg Abbott's name came up Wednesday as he campaigned for 3 Republican state representatives from Collin County in the upcoming March 5th primary. Representative Matt Shaheen talked up the governor.
I wouldn't say this publicly, but do y'all think it would be a cool idea if, like, President Trump was to make the governor the vice president?
After the event, I asked the governor about this.
You know my focus, Jack, and that's to be the leader of Texas. Listen, I could have run for national office had I wanted to, but I didn't want to because my focus is right here in the Lone Star State. I'm a Texan who loves Texas, and I want to chart an even brighter, stronger future for our state. I've already thought about running for re-election again, and I can tell you from the people talking to me here today, taking pictures with me today, same thing I hear every day. They say, Governor, please stay in Texas, please run again. That's what I hear every day from my fellow Texans, and that's what I intend to do.
The governor told the crowd in Allen that they should bank their votes early and not wait to go to the polls for the March 5th primary. And as you know, early voting is now underway. Amelia Mugavero spoke with voters to see what's on their minds.
I just think this is an important election, and I think that every voice needs to be heard.
The first day of early voting sparking passion among North Texas voters.
I'm pretty passionate about what I believe our direction of our country should be, and so I'm here to express my opinion.
Voters saying they want to beat the lines and also be among the first to have their say on big issues.
I think the illegal immigration, our border is just a mess, and we have got to close it.
You know, there's a couple of different things, you know, abortion rights have been taken away from women in this country. Supreme Court's out of control.
Big races also on the minds of voters. The race between Donald Trump and Nikki Haley for the Republican presidential nomination.
I wanted to vote for Nikki Haley.
Why?
Because I think she's the best candidate.
Along with contests for the U.S. House and U.S. Senate.
We're in a really bad spot as a country, and We need strong people like Colin Rollerhead who can go fight back and kick Ted Cruz out to the curb.
Then over in Tarrant County, Keller seeing a slow start to early voting, with a few people showing up at one of the polling sites to make sure their voice is also heard at the ballot box.
I'm happy I did it, and I feel good about it.
Whichever side you're on, Democrat or Republican, in order for our elections to be the best they can be, we need to make sure that the slate we put up there is the best candidates for the job.
As people vote, the latest Texas poll released by the Texas Politics Project at UT Austin shows how residents are feeling about the candidates in the major races. Following Nikki Haley's visit to Dallas, she's even further behind the former president than in other polls, trailing 80 to 9 percentage points, a 71 percentage point difference. In a two-way general election contest, Trump leads President Joe Biden 48 to 41 percentage points. But when it's a Haley and Biden matchup, the poll shows Biden with a 9 percentage point lead, 40% to 31%. In the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate here in Texas, North Texas Congressman Colin Allred has widened his lead over State Senator Roland Gutierrez of San Antonio. He's now reached 52% to Gutierrez's 14%. 7 other candidates are further behind. 18% say they want someone else. This suggests that Allred may win the primary outright, which means 50% of the vote plus 1. In a general election matchup, the poll shows Republican incumbent Ted Cruz has a 14 percentage point lead over Allred, 46 to 32%. And here's some political headlines across North Texas and the rest of the state. Attorney General Ken Paxton has filed a civil lawsuit against Denton ISD. Some employees are accused of using taxpayer-financed resources to electioneer, essentially telling people who they should vote for in the upcoming primary. A spokeswoman for Denton ISD says in part, quote, Denton ISD has been in conversation with the Texas Attorney General's office, and we agree that election laws should be followed. It is our expectation that these policies be followed. A Texas school district has won a legal battle against one of its high school students, Darrell George, over his hair. A state judge sided with the Babers Hill ISD, which placed George, a junior, into in-school suspension for wearing his hair in long locks. The district says George violated its policy on hair length, but George and his lawyers had argued the district was violating the new state law, the Texas Crown Act. It prohibits discriminating against a person's hair texture or style, including locks. The school district applauded the ruling. Now to an update on a story we told you about last Sunday. The City of Dallas's Charter Review Commission has decided against a proposal that would have moved the municipal elections for mayor and city council from the first Saturday in May during the odd years to Election Day in November during the odd years. The city council could still decide to do so, but it's not likely at this point. During the meeting Tuesday evening, city staff said that this proposal to move the city election received more public support than any of the 123 proposals they received. Dallas city leaders are now looking for a new city manager, and that's because the current city manager, T.C. Broadnax, announced this week that after 7 years, he's leaving the city effective June 3rd. He first joined the city in February 2017. Coming up next, there are 3 open congressional seats in North Texas, and there are a lot of candidates vying to represent you. We'll show you how these primaries are shaping up when Eye on Politics returns.
Ahead of the March primary, the Secretary of State announced Texas is now home to nearly 18 million registered voters. That number has grown as more people move here. The latest census data shows Texas has more than 30.5 million residents. That's roughly a 46% increase from 2000. At that time, there were only about 12 million registered voters in the state. Texas typically has a bleak record for primary voter turnout. In 2000, about 10% voted in the primary elections, but more than half the voters turned out for the general election. Fast forward to 2016, and about 20% showed up to vote in the primary and just under 60% in the general election. And for the last presidential election in 2020, just under 13% voted in the primaries, but more than 66% voted in the general election.
It's not often a congressional seat opens up in North Texas, but this year is a rarity in politics. There are 3 open congressional seats in our region. The 12th congressional district and parts of Tarrant and Parker counties, where Republican Kay Granger is retiring at the end of the year after what will be 28 years of serving in Congress. There's also the 26th congressional district and portions of Tarrant, Denton, and Wise counties, and all of Cook County, where Republican Dr. Michael Burgess has served since 2003. And finally, the 32nd congressional district and parts of Dallas and Collin counties, where Democrat Colin Allred first entered office in 2019. We spoke with SMU political science professor Matthew Wilson about the coming changes.
It will certainly result in an unusual amount of turnover within the delegation from this part of the state. It also speaks to the fact that increasingly members of the House are frustrated with the way that Congress works.
In the 32nd congressional district, there are 10 Democrats running in the primary to succeed Congressman Allred. This will remain a Democratic seat.
This Democratic primary on March 5th is really where the action is. Whoever emerges from that is overwhelmingly likely to hold the seat.
From early on, two candidates rose to the top when it comes to fundraising. State Representative Julie Johnson and Dr. Brian Williams, a trauma surgeon at Parkland Hospital in Dallas. Records with the Federal Election Commission show Johnson has raised more than $1 million since announcing her run and still has more than $573,000 in her campaign account. Williams has raised nearly $1 million and still has more than $543,000 in the bank.
It is almost certain to go to a runoff. It would be very surprising if any one of those candidates were able to capture the nomination in the first round. They've got a lot of money to do advertising. They've got a lot of money for the ground game, for block walking, canvassing, etc. In a crowded field like this, that's a huge advantage because it gives you a leg up in terms of making that all-important runoff.
Johnson has also racked up numerous endorsements from elected leaders and associations. The candidates have focused on improving health care access to reproductive rights and tightening gun restrictions.
What you see in a Democratic primary is much more focus on Democratic base issues like abortion. There's been a lot of sparring back and forth of who would be most aggressive in protecting abortion access or fighting for abortion access.
In the 26th congressional district, 11 Republicans are vying to succeed Congressman Dr. Michael Burgess. This is a Republican-held seat, so the winner of the primary will likely win the general election this fall.
I suspect that 2 of those 4 will end up in a runoff because I think a runoff in this district is virtually certain.
Wilson says a top tier of candidates has emerged, including Brandon Gill, who has won endorsements from former President Donald Trump and Senator Ted Cruz. Southlake Mayor John Huffman, who's being backed by North Texas Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne, and former Governor Rick Perry. Scott Armey, who ran for the seat in 2002 against Burgess, and who is the son of former Republican Majority Leader in the House, Dick Armey. He's racked up endorsements from numerous Denton County leaders. And entrepreneur Luisa del Rosal, who grew up in Mexico but became a U.S. citizen legally. Trump's endorsement, Wilson says, is a big help to Gill.
Trump's endorsement immediately gives him a certain amount of credibility with part of the Republican base, and that makes him a viable candidate here. And that's why we've started to see attack ads against him.
Wilson says while a Trump endorsement is no lock for the Republican nomination, it will help land him a spot in the runoff. That, he believes, will leave Huffman, del Rosal, and Armey fighting for the remaining position in a runoff.
Armey has, as you say, name recognition among older voters in the district. He's a very kind of traditional fiscal conservative, low spending, low taxes. That certainly was a Republican message that his father put forward. We'll see if that resonates now 30 years later. Huffman, I think, is contending for some of the same voters, the kind of very conservative MAGA crowd that Gill appeals to. So he's the one who probably has the most interest in attacking Gill and trying to peel off some of that support. And I think Luisa del Rosal is trying to mobilize some new voters, younger voters, suburban voters into the electorate to try to increase turnout, increase the range of participation.
In the 12th congressional district, 5 Republicans are vying for this Republican-held seat. Among them, State Representative Craig Goldman of Fort Worth, who has a huge lead in fundraising, bringing in over $1.1 million to his campaign. And he still has more than $1 million in his campaign account. Businessman John O'Shea has raised over $230,000 and has nearly $46,000 in his account. O'Shea has been endorsed by Attorney General Ken Paxton, while Goldman has locked up endorsements from Governor Greg Abbott, former Governor Rick Perry, and Fort Worth Mayor Mattie Parker, among many others. Wilson says Goldman could win this primary outright, which is 50% plus one vote.
Goldman is definitely the odds-on favorite here. He's got most of the Republican establishment coalesced behind him. He's got a big fundraising edge. If O'Shea is somehow able even to take this to a runoff, that's a bit of a feather in the cap for Ken Paxton, because Ken Paxton's really kind of going it alone on this one against the rest of the Republican power structure in the state. Even if it does go to a runoff, I would still see Goldman as the favorite to ultimately secure this nomination.
Trump has not made an endorsement in this race. While each Republican primary race is different, one common theme is that border security is the top issue among the candidates.
So they differ a little on the policy details, and that's important. But where they're all on the same page is they all think we need much stricter enforcement than what we have now. And that's where the overwhelming majority of the Republican primary electorate is.
And that's all for Eye on Politics this week. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening at CBS News Texas. Hope to see you again next Sunday. And from all of us here, enjoy the rest of your weekend.